I'm Michiel. I'm a first-year student in the Master of Economics. I went on exchange to Australia, to Monash University. Why did I choose to go on exchange to Australia? The main reason was, since I was a young child, I always had this dream to go on exchange to a very different country than Belgium, than Europe. I wanted to broaden my experience, my knowledge, and I think Australia is the perfect place. We've seen all the series, the movies about Australia, the big country, with all the travel opportunities, the beaches, the seas, the surfings. And I always had this in my mind and I would love to go there. And it was an amazing experience. I chose to go to Melbourne since I read an article that it's the most livable place on earth, a very unique place, a multicultural capital, not a capital, but a big city. And it's definitely worth going. It's such an amazing place. And Monash University is a very good university. It's very famous for its international people, its campus life, and it's a very good atmosphere there. It wasn't that difficult at all. It's, in the beginning, quite exhausting to have to think all the time in English, to start talking, reading, having conversation in English, but after 2 weeks, after a month, you start really thinking in another language, and then you know that you're really on exchange and you're experiencing something unique. The Monash University was a good level. I had more assignments during the year, so the workload was probably different. But since I had more work during the year, I had a quite easy exam period, which was nice since in Leuven is always stressful and a lot of hard work, and it was nice to have it the other way this time. The study method was quite different than here in Leuven. We had very small classes with a lot of interaction with the people. The classes were built up with a lot of international students, but also a lot of Australian domestic students. So it was very nice to get to know both kind of people and to get to know the Australian culture. The professors were very open, very social. They were very open for interaction and to get to know the people as well. And I loved it. How the assignments were divided was quite different than Leuven, since we had lots of assignments. I think 50% of the coursework was due to assignments during the year, which was quite stressful. But on the other hand, you had plenty of time to travel, to go abroad, to go to the city in the weekends after classes. So I wouldn't say the workload was too much or too high. It was a perfect balance, in my opinion. The teaching was similar and different at the same time, since the classes were very small, the interaction was higher, and it was just probably, it's the same everywhere, but if you go for international students, for an international class, you always have a lot of different opinions. Since here in Leuven, it's always, I have this feeling, students are more passive. While you go abroad, all the international students are very open, very enthusiastic, and you always have a lot of interesting discussions during the class. In Melbourne, I stayed on campus. At Monash University, there are different halls. Farrer Hall, Richmond Hall, all the halls are very competitive to each other, so it's quite like a movie. Like American Pie, for example, not an extreme, but you have all the halls on campus. They organize lots of activities, student orientation days, so it's very nice to get to know new people, both international students as Australian people. And in my opinion, it was the perfect way to meet my friends, and it's very convenient to stay close to uni while you can still take the train to Melbourne City, and it's just like 30 minutes away. So this is a shirt I got my arrival from Farrer Hall. Farrer Hall was the hall I stayed in for 4 months in Australia. It's a very community hall, a community vibed hall, with a lot of international students and domestic students as well. All the RAs, the responsible people there, were Australians, and they organized lots of activities, sport activities, cultural activities to get to know the city. And they definitely made my experience and made me feel home in Australia. So their slogan was "No Ferrer Left Behind," and they did well in their slogan. So definitely go to Ferrer Hall if you go to Monash. I would choose for 100% Australia again. Melbourne was the best city, the best experience I would ever had. And I think 50 years from now, I would still think back on those days as probably one of the best experiences I would ever had. The best thing about my exchange was probably the people. I met so many amazing people from all around the world, made friends who went on traveling to New Zealand, to Australia, and it was just the whole experience. It's very hard to pick one exact thing, but I think Melbourne is such a great city. Everyone is so open there. You have all the sport activities, it's a cultural vibe there. It's good nightlife, the uni is great quality, but the people is what makes your experience, so that's probably the best thing. What is the worst thing about studying in Australia and Melbourne? It's a very hard question, since I don't think there's a worst thing or a bad thing about it. Probably the only inconvenient thing is the time difference. It's sometimes hard to get in touch with friends and my family when the time difference is like 9 hours and they go to bed when you're waking up. But on the other hand, it's also quite nice to have a new life on your own for 6 months. Like, I've seen it as a second life away from the people I knew for 20 years. And in that sense, it's an amazing thing as well. So even the bad things can turn out to be the best things. If I would describe my experience abroad in 3 words, it would probably be travel. Travel because you have so many possibilities in Australia. You can go for a weekend to Sydney, to Melbourne, you can go on holiday to New Zealand, to Tasmania. The possibilities are endlessness. The second thing are probably the people. I met so many friends from all around the world who I'm still in touch with, and I have a lot of travel possibilities now, from India to America, to England, to Australia. And the last thing is probably the opportunities, the things I've learned about myself, about studying abroad, the experience I gained, and all the opportunities I had for the rest of my life are invaluable. So those are probably the 3 best things I learned in Australia. The thing I forgot about going to Australia, that it can be cold there. It's wintertime when you arrive in Australia. And I had this idea that it's always 30 degrees in Australia, sun, sea, beaches, and it's not. In Melbourne, it rains a lot. It can be like 10 degrees, it can be cold. So definitely take a hot sweater, a jacket. I completely forgot mine when I arrived in Australia. So don't make the same mistake as I did. If I can advise you one thing, if you go abroad in general to Australia or anywhere else, just have an open mindset. Try to embrace as much people, as much new things as you can. Like I said, you have lived here in Belgium for 20 years probably. It's such a unique opportunity to try new things, to meet new people, and to learn so many new skills about yourself that you didn't thought you had in you, or that you didn't thought you were interested in. And definitely go traveling. It's the most amazing thing. So when I arrived in Australia, I went on a hike and they told me about this koala, a drop bear. A drop bear is like an evil koala that attacks all the tourists. And it's a story that all the Australian people tell the tourists and international students, and I totally believed it at first. So I was scared as hell when I went hiking, that a drop bear attacked me and it was poisoning. But it turns out it was a fake story, of course. But if you go to Australia, people will probably tell you that. Don't believe them. Another curious thing about Australia is the competitiveness between Sydney and Melbourne. They both say they're the best capital, best city in Australia and the world. And if you talk to the locals there, people from Melbourne say Melbourne is the best. They have all the sport facilities. It's a cultural city of Australia. While the people from Sydney say, oh, Sydney is so much better. We have the beaches, the sun, all the monuments. Definitely go to Sydney. In my opinion, I've been to both. I'm maybe a little bit biased by Melbourne, but both cities are amazing. If you like the more sunny culture, the more beachy, surfy vibe, definitely go to Sydney. It's great, it's amazing. If you are more a cultural person who likes to go to museums, to concerts, who have like alternative neighborhoods with a lot of nice coffee bars, go to Melbourne. I loved Melbourne and I would definitely pick Melbourne again all over. I can recommend everyone to go on exchange to Australia or anywhere else, since it's the most amazing experience I would ever had. You meet the most amazing people from all around the world. You learn a lot about yourself. You have the travel opportunities that you always wished for. You are just experiencing new life, and that's, in my opinion, one of the best things I ever experienced in my life. So definitely go on exchange.